Smart retirees always do something before they turn 70. Something simple, but powerful. And most people do not realize it until it is too late. Now, I am not a financial expert. I am just a man who has lived a full life, loved deeply, lost people I cared about, and sat alone at my kitchen table wondering, have I truly prepared for the years ahead? If you are in your 60s, whether you are retired or planning to retire soon, this message is for you. Because no matter how much money you have saved, how healthy you feel, or how strong your plans seem, there is something you still need to do before you reach 70. And it is not just about paperwork. It is not just about numbers. It is about peace of mind. It is about making choices now while you still can, so your future is not left to chance or burdened by regret. I'm going to share with you what I personally did, not theory, not someone else's story, my own journey, what I did right, what I wish I had done sooner, and what you can do today while time is still on your side. 1. The wake-up moment. Realizing time isn't infinite. I was 67 when it happened. A quiet morning like any other. I was standing by the window, coffee in hand, just watching the light creep over the trees in the backyard. The house was still. The kind of stillness that settles in after the kids are long gone and the holidays are behind you. It wasn't sad. Just still. And then it hit me. 3 more years. In 3 short years, I would be 70? That number sat heavy on my chest. 70. It's not the number itself that shook me. It was what it represented. I had spent so many years working, providing, running, planning for everyone else. But I had never really stopped to ask myself, what about me? What comes next? For me. The strange thing about aging is that it sneaks up quietly. You're busy living, doing the right things, raising a family, caring for others. And then one day, time taps you on the shoulder and says, I'm moving on, whether you're ready or not. That morning, I remember thinking, I've always been responsible. I saved, I paid off the house, I stayed out of debt, I tried to be a good man. But none of that guaranteed peace of mind. None of it answered the question, am I truly ready for this next season of life? Not just financially, but emotionally, spiritually, mentally. That was my wake-up moment. See, something changes in your 60s. The world gets quieter, and your own thoughts get louder. You start to hear the little worries you used to ignore about health, money, family, meaning. You think about what kind of old man you want to be. Do I want to drift into 70 unprepared, reacting to every storm that comes my way? Or do I want to walk into it with my head high, knowing I've done what needed to be done? I knew then I had to make some changes, not drastic ones, but deliberate ones. I had to start thinking differently. Less about accumulation, more about alignment. Less about, do I have enough? And more about, am I living wisely with what I have? And honestly, it wasn't fear that pushed me. It was love. Love for my future self. Love for my kids and grandkids. I wanted to give them the gift of a man who wasn't just still breathing, but still living, still grounded, still clear. So I made a decision. I decided that I would treat the next 3 years like a bridge from my working years to my legacy years. I would look at every part of my life, money, health, home, heart, and I would ask myself, is this going to serve me well at 70 and beyond? It wasn't about perfection. It was about preparation. It was about not drifting into the next chapter, but walking into it with intention. And I'm telling you this now because if you're 65, 68, even 69, it's not too late. But I'll tell you this, 70 comes faster than you think. One day, you're trimming the bushes in the yard. The next, you're asking your doctor to speak a little louder. Time is funny like that. That quiet morning changed me. It didn't make me fearful. It made me focused. It made me honest with myself. And it's the reason I'm speaking to you now, because maybe you need a morning like that too. 2. Financial clarity, facing the numbers without fear. After that morning by the window, one of the first things I did was sit down at my old kitchen table with a stack of papers, bank statements, retirement accounts, insurance policies, Social Security estimates, all the stuff I had avoided looking at too closely for years. It wasn't that I was reckless. I had always been careful with money, but somewhere along the line, I convinced myself that as long as I didn't spend too much and kept my bills paid, everything would somehow just work out. The truth is, I didn't want to deal with the details. I thought, it's too late to fix anything now, or worse. I'll figure it out when I have to. But 70 was getting close. And I knew that if I wanted peace of mind, not just for me, but for my family, I had to face the numbers without fear. So I laid everything out. I looked at what was coming in each month, what was going out, what was invested, and what was just sitting there. And you know what I discovered? I wasn't in bad shape, but I wasn't as prepared as I thought I was either. For starters, I was losing money every year to taxes I didn't even realize I could reduce. I was taking Social Security at the wrong time. I hadn't updated my beneficiaries in over a decade. I still had subscriptions draining my bank account that I hadn't used since before my wife passed. That part stung. Seeing her name on old paperwork. Realizing I had been too emotionally tired to deal with those details for too long, but avoiding it didn't protect me. It just delayed my peace. I talked to a friend of mine. He used to be a financial planner before retiring. I remember him saying, "The goal isn't to die with the most money. The goal is to live with the least worry." That stuck with me. So I made some changes. I consolidated accounts. I reviewed my Medicare plan and found better coverage for less cost. I re-evaluated my monthly spending, not to cut out joy, but to make sure every dollar was going towards something I actually cared about. And here's something I'll tell you that nobody really talks about. Clarity feels better than comfort. You don't need $1 million to retire well. You need to know what you have, where it's going, and how it serves the life you want. I also took time to talk to my kids, not to ask for help, but to let them know where everything stood. I didn't want to leave behind a mystery or a mess. I've seen too many families torn apart over things that could have been solved with one honest conversation. Look, I know money isn't the most exciting topic, but I promise you, when you finally sit down and look at it with open eyes and an open heart, you'll feel lighter. You'll feel more in control. And at this stage of life, that's everything. It's not about having more. It's about knowing what enough really looks like. And I can tell you this with confidence. The smartest thing I did before 70 was stop avoiding the numbers and start owning them. If you haven't done that yet, start small. One drawer, one account, one conversation. You don't have to do it all in one day, but you do have to begin, because your peace of mind is worth far more than your balance sheet. 3. Emotional housekeeping. Letting go of what no longer serves you. After I faced the numbers, something unexpected happened. I started noticing other kinds of clutter in my life, not just in my finances, but in my heart, in my home, and in my mind. It was like once I cleared the fog off one window, I realized all the other ones needed cleaning too. So I started what I now call my emotional housekeeping. At first, it was simple. I began sorting through drawers I hadn't opened in years. Letters, photos, birthday cards from people I hadn't spoken to in decades, old tools I no longer used, a box of sweaters my wife had folded so carefully years ago. Some of them still carried her scent. I didn't throw everything away. That's not the point. But I did ask myself one thing. Does this still serve my life today? Or am I just holding on to it because I'm afraid to let go? That question changed everything. I let go of a lot, not just objects, but old habits, old stories, old guilt. There were relationships I had held onto out of obligation, even though they drained me. There were regrets I carried like a weight, even though they no longer helped me grow. Letting go didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean disrespecting the past. It meant making space. Space to breathe, to move, to be present. I also finally sat down and updated my will. Not because I thought the end was near, but because I didn't want to leave behind a trail of confusion. I wanted to give my children clarity, not questions. I've seen too many families broken by uncertainty. That wasn't going to be my legacy. Let me tell you something I learned in that process. Peace is not just a feeling. Peace is something you build. And sometimes, building peace means releasing the things that no longer belong in this chapter of your life. I even looked at the roles I had taken on over the years. Always the helper. Always the one who showed up, even when I was tired. Somewhere along the way, I forgot that it was okay to rest. It was okay to say, not anymore. This stage of life requires a different kind of courage, not the kind we had when we were younger, charging into the world, taking on everything. No, this is a softer, wiser courage, the kind that whispers, it's time to travel lighter. I realized I don't need to be the keeper of everything anymore. Not every photo needs to be saved. Not every tradition needs to be repeated. Not every memory needs to be clung to in fear of losing it. Some things we honor best by letting go. And when we do, we make room for rest, for joy, for what truly matters now. So if you're standing in a house full of stuff, or a heart full of unspoken words, or a mind filled with what ifs, I hope you'll consider doing a little emotional housekeeping of your own. Not because you have to, but because you deserve to feel light again. 4. Health with intention. Choosing strength before it's forced. When I turned 68, I started noticing the small things, not the big dramatic changes people warn you about. No heart attacks, no surgeries, no scary diagnosis. No, it was subtler. I'd get winded quicker walking up the stairs. My hands would ache a little more in the morning. I started forgetting where I put my keys, more than usual. At first, I laughed it off, said things like, just getting older, or happens to the best of us. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just about aging. This was about how I was living. You see, for most of my life, I treated health like a background character. As long as I wasn't sick, I thought I was fine. I didn't eat terribly, but I didn't eat with purpose. I wasn't sedentary, but I wasn't really active either. I slept when I could, saw the doctor when I had to, and kept going. But around that time, I asked myself a question I hadn't dared to ask before. What if I lose my independence, not all at once, but little by little? That thought hit me harder than anything else. I didn't fear death. I feared not being able to live well while I was alive. So I made a choice. I decided to take my health seriously, not because someone told me to, but because I still had time to protect what mattered most: my strength, my clarity, my dignity. I didn't go on some crazy diet. I didn't join a gym. I just started walking every morning. 15 minutes at first, then 20, then 30. I cut back on sugar. I swapped heavy dinners for lighter ones. I drank more water. I scheduled the checkups I had been avoiding, and I started sleeping better. Not just because my body felt better, but because my mind was quieter. I was no longer avoiding. I was choosing. One of the best decisions I made was sitting down with my doctor, not just for a physical, but to talk honestly about what to expect in the next 10 or 20 years. I asked about long-term care, about mental health, about cognitive changes, about what I could do now to protect the life I still wanted to live. Some of that conversation was hard, but it was also empowering. It reminded me that I wasn't helpless. I wasn't just waiting for things to go wrong. I could prepare, I could act, I could choose to be strong for as long as possible. I remember saying, I'm not trying to live forever. I just want to walk into my 80s with my head up and my feet under me. And I meant that. Health at this age isn't about perfection. It's about protection. It's about building a foundation that can hold you steady when the winds start to blow harder. So if you've been putting off the checkups, if you've been telling yourself, it's too late to start now, let me tell you something. It is never too late to care for yourself. Not because you're afraid of what might happen, but because you respect yourself enough to do what you can while you still can. The body may slow down, but the spirit doesn't have to. And sometimes, the smallest choices, one walk, one healthy meal, one appointment, can be the difference between merely surviving and truly living. 5. Meaning and legacy, what I want my last years to stand for. Not long after my 70th birthday, I sat alone in the backyard, watching the wind move through the trees. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that invites reflection. And I asked myself a question I had never fully considered, at least not out loud. What do I want these last years of my life to mean? Not just what I want to do, but what I want to stand for. It's a question that sneaks up on you once the noise dies down, once the career ends, once the kids are grown, once the goals have all been checked off or quietly forgotten. For most of my life, I was focused on building, providing, solving, fixing. There was always something to chase, a mortgage to pay, a graduation to attend, a problem to solve. But once all that fades into the background, you're left with the quiet truth. Your time is no longer about building. It's about becoming. So I started thinking deeply about the kind of man I wanted to be now. Not the man I used to be, not the man people expected, but the man who wakes up each day knowing that life is still sacred, still beautiful, still worth living with intention. I started writing again. Not a book, just little pieces of memory for myself, for my grandkids someday. I planted a small lemon tree behind the house. My wife always loved lemons, and I figured maybe one day my granddaughter would pick fruit from it. I began calling old friends, not because I needed anything, but just to say, hey, I still think about you. I started showing up to community events, not out of obligation, but because being part of something still matters to me. And more than anything, I tried to be present, in small ways, listening more, complaining less, saying thank you for the little stuff, choosing kindness even when no one was watching. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to be remembered for what I owned. I want to be remembered for how I lived. And maybe you feel that same tug deep in your chest, the desire not just to leave something behind, but to make these years count. Legacy isn't about the will you leave on paper. It's about the love you leave in people's hearts. It's about being the kind of elder who lights a path, who offers wisdom, not through speeches, but through presence. So if you're in your 60s or 70s, wondering what comes next, know this: meaning is not behind you. It's ahead of you, right here, right now. You don't need a big plan. You just need a soft heart, a clear mind, and a willingness to show up day by day as your truest self. That's the kind of legacy I want to leave. And I hope, in some way, it inspires you to think about the one you're building too. The power of one small decision. Before I close, I want to share something I wish someone had told me when I was 60. Big change doesn't come from big moments. It comes from small decisions, quiet ones, made consistently with care. It took me a long time to understand that. You see, for years, I thought that if I wanted to turn my life around in retirement, I had to do something dramatic, downsize everything, sell the house, move to a warmer state, get in the best shape of my life, make some grand gesture that would change everything at once. But you know what changed my life more than anything? One morning walk. That first walk I took after deciding to take better care of my health. It wasn't long, maybe 10 minutes, but I showed up again the next day, and the next, and suddenly it became part of me. It wasn't about exercise anymore. It was about showing up for myself. Another time, I canceled a subscription I hadn't used in years. $15 a month. Seemed small. But that little act sparked something bigger. I started paying attention to every dollar, every choice. One day, I picked up the phone and called someone I hadn't talked to in 15 years. No big plan. Just a quick, "Hey, you came to mind today." That call rekindled a friendship I thought I'd lost forever. Small decisions. We live in a world that glorifies big gestures, but what I've learned is this. Lasting peace is built one brick at a time. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to fix everything this week. You just need to make one good decision today. One drawer cleaned, one healthy meal, one appointment scheduled, one hard conversation started, one page written, one kind word said out loud. You'll be amazed what can happen when you stop trying to change your whole life at once and simply focus on being better by one step today than you were yesterday. At 72, I no longer chase milestones. I follow momentum. And momentum, my friend, starts with one thing: choice. So if you're still listening and you're wondering what to do next, don't overthink it. Choose one thing. Do it with heart. And let tomorrow meet you there, because one small decision can change the rest of your life. Thank you for spending this time with me. If you're still here, it means something in this message spoke to you. And I hope you take that as a sign, not of fear, but of readiness. Readiness to live these years with clarity, courage, and care. You don't need to rush. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to begin. You've come too far, lived through too much, and given so generously to others. Now it's time to give something back to yourself. Peace of mind, strength, and a life that feels yours again. So take one small step today, for yourself, for the people you love, for the future that still belongs to you. And if this message touched your heart, share it with someone who might need it too, because we're all walking this road together, and none of us should do it alone. Until next time, take good care of yourself. You've earned it.